So I watched that Spider-Man movie thing last night, and I figured I would share my opinion of the movie. And it was trash. Actually, I enjoyed it a pretty decent amount, which is saying something because I haven't had a fully positive experience watching a Marvel movie in a while. So yeah, good job, Spider-Man. So I've never done a review of a show or a movie or anything on this channel, so I'm going to come up with a format and do it that same way and keep that format, so if I want to do this with future shows and movies, I can just do it like this. So this is how I'll do it. I will break it up into these few categories. We'll go through story, characters, plot holes, what was surprising, the action scenes, the acting, just random things that I noticed during the film, and then I will give an overall grade thing. So yeah, that's how this is gonna go. Also,
Spoiler warning.
if you don't want spoilers, don't watch past this point. I feel like I don't need to say this because you're watching a review. Not a preview, but either way, if you don't want to see spoilers, stop watching and come back after you've seen the movie. But please come back. Anyways, with that out of the way, let's start with the story. 'Twas good. There isn't too much to say here that wasn't already said in the trailers, actually. That's not necessarily a bad thing, though. But I'll do a short recap. Peter realizes that him being known as Spider-Man is hurting his friends' lives. All three of them get rejected from MIT due to them all being associated with Spider-Man, or in Peter's case, being Spider-Man. They have some issues going on. They end up having like a court case, which they end up getting out of perfectly fine. Just their social status is hurt. Everyone knows where they live and whatnot too now, so bit of an issue there. There's a quick scene of them meeting with a lawyer guy to go over the case, and it's Matthew Murdock, so there's a fun little callback thingy. Anyway, because of all this, Peter asks Strange to do a spell to make everyone forget that he's Spider-Man. And Strange agrees because he wants to help him, and he eventually goes down and they begin the spell. But Peter keeps altering the spell to include more people to remember who he is, like MJ and Ned and whatnot, so that they don't forget. But because he keeps changing this in the spell goes wrong because magic. I'm actually not sure why him changing his mind causes the spell to break, but I'll get back to that later. Strange manages to contain the spell and kicks Peter out after finding that this was Peter's first option and he could have just, talked to admissions at MIT first, but somehow Peter didn't know how to do that, and he didn't actually know that that was something he can do at all. So, yeah. So Peter decides to go and do that. He figures out that a lady that works for MIT for admissions or something is heading back to the airport, and he goes to talk to her right before she gets there. He decides to do this on the highway for some reason, because that doesn't look weird at all. He asks her to reconsider MJ and Ned's college acceptance because he drugged them into his life as Spider-Man and they shouldn't have been blamed for anything. And this is where the bad dudes start coming in. Doc Ock fights him on the bridge and does the, "You ain't Peter." And Peter was like, "Yeah, I am, boy." And they fight for a brief moment, and Peter actually ends this fight by hacking Doc Ock's arms by using the nanotechnology, which is actually pretty freaking cool. It looks like Ock takes the nanotechnology, but Peter just uses it to hack his arms and just disable him entirely, and I thought that was kind of awesome. But anyway, Peter saves the MIT lady who is the one hanging off the bridge in the trailer, and she's like, "I'ma help your homies get in college." After this, Green Goblin starts to come out, but Strange teleports him and Doc back into the basement prison thing of the Sanctum. And Lizard Boy is already in the cell thingy because Strange got him. Strange tells Peter to go catch the Pokemon villains with a magic web slinger that teleports things to the cell if they get hit with the web. So Peter goes into the woods to fight Electro Dude, who is now sexy for some reason. I have no clue why that is like that. Electro was probably gonna beat Peter until Deus Ex Sandman comes in and is like, "Yo, Peter, I'ma help." And then Peter's like, "I'm a different Peter." But they still team up and cut off Electro's power supply by destroying the power lines. Peter then teleports Electro to the cell. Sandman kind of flips out a bit, is like, "Whoa, did you kill him?" And he goes to punch Peter, but Peter teleports him as well. I ended up going to the bathroom at this point because I just chugged a bunch of drinks. But I was told that, Osborn was having a mental breakdown in an alleyway and was talking to the Goblin helmet. He ended up smashing it, which is why he doesn't have it the rest of the movie, and I guess May found him in the alleyway. But Peter comes in with Osborn on the table. He's kind of losing his mind, and he's like, "I don't like being the Goblin boy." Peter talks to May, and May ends up convincing Peter to try to help the people instead of just sending them back as broken people still. Peter brings Osborn back to the facility with the others, and Peter learns that all of the villain bros were about to die when they got transferred to the new dimension. So if they got back, they would just die fighting their Spider-Man anyway. Peter does not like that at all. Strange comes in with a box artifact thingy, I don't remember what it was called, and says that he'll send them all back. Peter doesn't want him to because they'll all end up dying, and Peter and Strange end up having a very fun action sequence where he eventually keeps Strange locked in the mirror dimension without his ring. Peter comes back and says that he can help the people so that they don't become dead when they go back. So Peter brings them all to Happy's place, which is where May is staying, and that's been their compound for a while. Not the safest place for May to be during all this, but whatever, I guess. Peter and Osborn work to fix Doc's chip in his brain, and they end up doing that, so he good guy now. Peter then does a thingy to Electro to make him better, and Electro kinda doesn't like it, kinda gets all freaky-feely. Peter goes to check some of the other stuff to cure the other people, and then his tingly-wingly goes all crazy, and he senses that Osborn's about to be bad again. So he locks Osborn to the thing with a web, and Osborn starts talking real evil, and convinces Electro to take off his thingy. And then everyone kind of scatters and a bunch of crap's happening. Electro takes the arc reactor that is powering the thing that Peter was using to create the cures. So now he has an unlimited power supply, so that's pretty cool, I guess. It's actually a pretty cool way to make Electro, like, a villain that doesn't have to continuously be plugged into an outlet. And then Osborn proceeds to beat the living crap out of Peter and kills May, which you can kind of see coming when she's still there at the thing and they give her a lot of camera time showing her running away. You can kind of get the sense that she might not be alive here in a few minutes. I'll talk about this scene a little bit later as well. So now all the bad guys are loose again, including Doc for some reason. Not sure where he went. Peter gets shot by police before running away and being sad because May died. Ned discovers that he can use Strange's ring, which is very freaking lucky. Ned then tries to use a portal to summon Peter, but summons two other Peters. Bet you can't guess who they are. So the other two Spider-Men? Spider dudes. The other two Spider dudes come in and do some, yo, we both Peter Parker stuff. And instead of Ned using the portal again to find Peter, which should have worked the next time, they have to do this whole thing where MJ figures out where Peter is. They get together and cry for a bit because May dead. Not sure how Ned and MJ know about this because the news said one casualty and they didn't say who. But anyway, the other two Spider dudes show up and talk to him for a bit to make him feel better. They end up doing the great ability comes great responsibility or whatever. And then they all become friends. So they all agree to work together and cure the villains. So they fix or recreate the cures that got broken in the fight when all the villains escaped and scattered. They do some Spider-Man talk with each other and get ready to go after the bad guys. They go to the Statue of Liberty, which now has Captain America's shield being added onto it, and Tom's Peter, Tom being Tom Holland, calls into the Daily Bugle. He explained the situation and then does the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man thing that was in the trailer. All the Spider dudes have a fun little talk with each other that is kind of similar to Day of the Doctor, which is when 3 doctors in Doctor Who met each other. Then Electro, Lizard Boy, and Sandman all come at them and they start fighting. I have no clue why Sandman is fighting now when it's been apparent that the Spider dudes are just trying to help, but whatever. I'm also a bit disappointed in Electro here. I'll talk about that in a bit as well. But they fight, have a team meeting because they kind of suck in a bit, and then magically team better because they made a strategy or something. Oh yeah. At the start of the fight, Peter threw the box thingy at MJ and Ned in the portal to get it out of the way. But Ned apparently can't close portals, and Lizard Boy ends up seeing the portal, trying to run in, and then Tom's Peter goes in, runs after him. Ned and MJ run out of the portal, and they're now in the fighting area. Ned opens another portal, and Strange comes through and takes the box and the ring back. They tell him to wait and show him the plan's working. Peter takes out Lizard Boy and cures him. And before Ned and MJ got there, they cured Sandman, by the way. I'm not entirely sure why that's not in my notes, but I guess I didn't write it down. Strange is sitting there like, oh, cool, the plan's working. I'm not actually sure what he does for the rest of the fight for now, but yeah. All 3 Spider dudes go after Electro, and he finally decides to be powerful for a minute and manages to start beating up all 3 of them. He gets them to the point where he's holding one of them back. One of them is knocked out, and there's only one up. They do some cool Spider-Man throw a vial thing, and one Spider-Man gets the cure and is about to jump and cure him, when Doc shows up, pins him back, and grabs the one who's currently being electrocuted by Electro as well. Ock then grabs Electro as well, and is like, I'm a good boy. And then stops and cures Electro. Then Strange has the box and is like, I got a cool box, and then Goblin flies in and takes the box, and then Strange quickly gets the box back, but Goblin put a big old bomb in it, and it goes boom. So now the stuff in the construction zone starts to fall, and this is where MJ falls. Our Peter, aka Tom, gets hit away by Goblin when he dives down to get her, and Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man catches her. Which, I mean, really, how else are they going to write this? So he finally learned how to catch someone and not kill them. Ned ends up getting caught by Strange's cape, and Strange is now working on containing the spell, because that's what the box was doing before. Peter fights Goblin, starts to beat the living crap out of him because he's pissed now, and he is going to flat out kill the boy. And then Toby Spider-Man stops him and stares at him. He's like, "Don't do it, bro." And then he gets stabbed in the spine, which I saw coming as soon as he jumped in because he was standing right next to Goblin, who was on the ground. Then Peter really wants to kill him, but just stabs him in the neck with a cure instead. And then Osborn is like, "What have I done?" Andrew Spider-Man comes in and helps out Toby. Peter goes back to Strange, and Strange says the spell has been released, and everyone who knows Spider-Man in every single multiverse is going to come through, and I can't stop it. He also says that he can't recast the spell to make people forget that he is Spider-Man for some reason. Then Peter says to cast a new spell to make everyone forget who Peter Parker was. Strange is like, "Yeah, that should work, bro, but nobody gonna know who you are." Peter then goes to say his goodbyes. He ends up kissing MJ and then jumping away. Then everybody forgets who he is, and everybody who wasn't supposed to be in the universe goes back to where they were. The last scenes are Peter trying to tell MJ who he is, but he ends up not doing it. I mean, it would have been really hard to get her to be convinced of that anyways. He visits May's grave at some point, and Happy's there. I don't remember if this is before or after the next scene that I'm going to talk about, but I'm just going to do it now before I forget about it. He then moves into an apartment and then swings around with his new blue and red suit, and that's where the movie ends. The end credits scene has Eddie Brock, also known as Venom, at a bar, and he ends up being like, "I guess I gotta go talk to Spider-Man." But then he gets sent back before he even leaves the bar. And for some reason, a tiny part of Venom gets left behind. I have no clue how that works, but whatever. So yeah, that's the story. There's nothing super mind-blowing, but it's a good story and it was executed very well. There really weren't any plot holes that felt like it broke a bunch of stuff in the universe. Most of the story stuff was actually talked about in the trailer, but it still didn't really let down because it was executed so well. So yeah, the story was pretty solid. So the characters I'm going to talk about are the three Spider-Men: Ned, MJ, May, Happy, Electro, Lizard Boy, Sandman, Osborn, Doc Ock, and Strange. There are some side characters as well, but I'm not going to bring them up because it would be like 2 sentences and that's a waste of time. Ned was Ned, and Ned was still awesome. He's also magic now for some reason, but that probably won't be brought up again. MJ was pretty good. She was still really sarcastic, but she is much softer around Peter. You can really tell that she cares about him and she wants to be there to help him, which is hard to do because he's Spider-Man, but she still does everything she can. May was pretty much the same May throughout the rest of the movies. The only difference in this movie is she's dead for some of it. Happy didn't really do much but break up with May and be sad when she died, which is when he went to the grave and didn't know who Peter was. Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire's Spider Dudes they're mostly for laughs and extra manpower and some callback stuff, but they made sure to do some character stuff with them as well. In their first scenes, they talked about some of what they've been through to help out our Peter and give him some advice. So they're fine. Electro just wants to stay in the universe because he has a sexy body and he isn't going to die or something like that. I guess he also probably really likes the arc reactor. That's pretty much his main motivation. Lizard Boy does literally nothing in this movie, and he's kinda just there for another body to add to the last fight. Sandman is pretty much the same thing, but the only difference is he has a daughter. I also have no clue why he's teaming with the bad dudes at the end, but cool, I guess. Osborn also doesn't want to die when he gets back, and when he's Goblin, he just wants to be as evil to Peter as he can. And my boy was actually pretty enjoyable to watch. Next, we have Doc Ock, who's a bit of a weird character to talk about. In the start, he's evil because of the chip in his brain is brokey, and it causes the arms to make him evil. He started out trying to find Spider-Man because his machine is gone, and he's not sure where he is. And then once he gets fixed and he wants to help Peter, but during the scene where all the villains escape and he just runs away and isn't seen until the end of the movie where he helps out again. So I'm not sure what he did in between, but I guess it wasn't important. And then we have Strange, who wants to help Peter with the college thing, but then wants to stop Peter from helping other people later because it's their fate to die or whatever. Which kind of seems strange for him to be saying, as he once looked into however many outcomes in either Infinity War or Endgame. Those movies kind of blur together for me. To see how to beat Thanos just so they can do that and save half the population of the entire universe. And also, Strange is so overpowered that fixing them shouldn't have been that much of an issue, especially when seeing how easily Peter was taking care of it by himself. But I guess they needed a conflict between him and Peter so that he can get stuck in the mirror dimension almost the entire movie and then come back at the end when magic is needed again. And last, we'll talk about MCU/our Peter played by Tom Holland. I actually think this movie did a really good job with his character, except for a few little moments where they made his character seem kinda stupid to play for laughs. But those are just minor things, which is probably gonna be me nitpicking a little bit, but it's fine. But I think they did a good job showing that he's been a Spider-Man for just a little bit now, but he's also still a kid, and when stuff starts getting really bad, he starts to break and he isn't quite sure what to do. He learns to lean more on those around him throughout the movie, because they are there for him. And at the end, when he's going to turn to the dark side before Jedi Master Maguire steps in, it all made sense. How many people would actually spare Osborn in that situation? The answer's pretty much nobody. He doesn't care that Osborn is sick and isn't controlling himself. He just wants to feel better about May dying. And in that moment, he didn't care what that meant for Osborn. And then in the end, he sacrifices his entire life, everything he had ever done as Peter, to save the world. Which still fits his character and fits exactly what any Spider-Man would do. So yeah, his character was almost near perfect. So for plot holes, I only really noticed two, and they both involved magic. Magic in movies is really hard to consistently pull off, especially with how overpowered it is in Marvel movies. A lot of the time you get rules that'll just be made up on the spot, and they're only there to move the story in the way they want it to go. Which sometimes isn't a bad thing, but a lot of the times it seems very random and is one of those just because things in movies. Anyway, the first plot hole is very minor and is probably more just me nitpicking again, but I'm doing a review so I feel like I'm allowed to do that. When Peter was changing his mind about who should forget it first, why does that change the spell that Strange is casting? I can understand changing the spell can be bad and do something like bring people in from other dimensions, but I still have no clue why Peter was able to change the spell, unless Spider-Man is magic. But yeah, if Strange was the one doing the spell and is the magic one, then I have no clue why Peter was able to change that, but yeah. And the second one was at the end, when Strange was holding back the broken spell the best he could. Peter tells him to just recast the spell and make everyone forget that he is Spider-Man, and for some reason Strange can't. I believe they give a brief explanation, but it didn't really make sense to me. And again, it might just be nitpicking, but it just feels off. The best explanation I can come up with is you can't fix the broken spell with the same spell or something like that, which is kind of a meh explanation, but whatever. It was another fairly minor thing anyways. So a couple of things that surprised me was, it was actually kind of cool to see Doc Ock getting cured so early and him being a good character throughout most of the movie. It was also kind of nice to see that too. I also wasn't really expecting Goblin to be the main villain out of all of them, but he was, and he ended up being a pretty dang good one. As far as surprises, that was about it for me. I saw May dying coming as soon as she was in that apartment with all of them. I was like, this ain't a good situation for her to be in. I guess coming into the movie, I didn't really think much about that, but it wasn't too surprising when it happened. And the same thing, it would have been a surprise coming into the movie that everyone was going to forget who Peter Parker was at the end. But once it was in the movie, it made sense, and it wasn't too surprising when it happened. So for the action, it was a Marvel movie, so if the action was bad, it's probably a very bad movie. I really loved Goblin powerbombing Peter through like 5 floors. That was pretty awesome. The brief conflict with Strange in the mirror dimension was really freaking cool. I always really liked the visuals in the mirror dimension. Really, the only thing I didn't like about all the fights and whatnot in the movie was Electro, and he felt really weak. At no point did I think Electro was actually going to win. Even once he got the arc reactor, it seemed like he was just gonna lose. Actually, it didn't really seem like the arc reactor helped them all that much, other than making him slightly more mobile. But yeah, that was my main problem with the action. Now for the acting, I thought it was really good for everyone. They all knew their characters, and they all knew what they were supposed to do, and they all did their job excellently. The standouts for me were Tom Holland, Willem Dafoe, and Marissa Tomei. I am sorry if I butchered any of those names. I have no clue how to say people's names. I've always thought Tom does a very good job playing a younger Spider-Man, and he did an amazing job once again. The specific example I want to give is when May dies, which is also the best scene that Marissa was in. Marissa does an amazing job that showing May was in shock. She keeps saying she's fine because in May's mind she is. This scene actually reminded me of the death scene in 1917 quite a bit. When May falls down, she starts looping and saying she just needs to catch her breath over and over, and doesn't seem to realize how bad she actually is. And when Peter sees his hand covered in blood, May asks what's wrong, and she still doesn't know what's going on. And I thought this was a perfect portrayal of the shock that would come in for being stabbed and dying. So good job, Marissa. And then after May fully dies, Tom doesn't do the normal yelling and crying that we see in movies a lot. He can't really process what just happened and doesn't know what to do. He says flat out, "What are you doing?" and tells her to wake up a couple of times. He starts to cry more as the scene goes on because his mind is just starting to catch up to what happened and he's just now realizing what's actually going on. So yeah, I just thought this scene was pretty freaking awesome. And then we have Dafoe playing Goblin, and he was just awesome. He really knows how to play a psychopath pretty well. And when Osborn was the one in control, He played the awkward scientist character very well as well. It was a really awesome performance, and I want to say more about it, but the entire thing was just real good, and I can't really pick any specific moments out of it. So yeah, some things I noticed was like there was obviously a couple of Easter eggs within like lines and just things in the movie. And it wouldn't be a Marvel movie without them because they can't make a movie without doing that for some reason. But I did notice something that I think could be right, and that is Doc Ock is probably going to end up dying anyways once he gets back to the other dimension. He was sent to our dimension at the exact moment that his machine was overloading. So when he gets sent back, he's going to be sent back to that exact timeline. If you remember in the original movie, he ended up getting back in control and sacrificing himself to stop the machine. So he'll probably end up doing the exact same thing anyways once he gets back. Assuming that he gets sent back to the same time. If time still progresses while he was in the other universe and he gets sent back after, he's just going to be sent back to a bunch of rubble. So yeah, that's something I thought of. So overall, I thought this was a really solid movie. The story wasn't the most amazing idea for a story ever, but it was solid and it was executed pretty dang well. The characters all felt like themselves, and the movie either furthered their characters some, or killed them if their name was May. So I'm going to give Spider-Man No Way Home a 90 out of 100, or A if you like letters. I was going to give this a higher score, but there were just some small things that bothered me, and it was a fairly predictable movie if you watched the trailer. Which again isn't a bad thing. You can make a trailer show most of the movie and it still be a good movie. The main twists were May dying and the memory wipe, but again, once you started getting close to it in the movie, it was really the only way it would logically play out. But yeah, I really enjoyed the movie and I would definitely watch it again. It's definitely the best Marvel film in a long time and has made me want to watch some of the future Marvel movies, which is something I haven't wanted to do in a while. So yeah, go watch it if you haven't. And if you haven't watched it, I'm not sure why you're still here. But if you have watched till this point, thank you very much. This is a very different video from my normal videos, but I've also said multiple times that I have no set content, so this might be something I do from time to time. But yeah, alright. I'm gonna go back to working on that project I was working on.